Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Get Healthy Tampa Bay podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kerry Reller, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Chinyelu Oraedu. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Kerry.
Yes, it's so nice to have you, and I appreciate your acceptance to coming on the podcast. We are really excited to hear about what you have to say and what you've gone through. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Thank you again, Kerry. My name is Chinyelu Oraedu. I'm a physician, and most people know me also as Dr. Yel'Ora, because Yel'Ora it's my name. It's the later part of Chinyelu and the first three words of Oraedu, my last name. So kind of represents my night shift. I go to work at the later part of the day and the evening time, during dusk, and I emerge during dawn in the morning. I work mostly as a nocturnist, inpatient setting. So I've been a nocturnist for over a decade,
Mhm.
surprisingly. I don't know how I survived it, but I've been surviving it. But the thing is that I just had twins, and my husband works in New York City because I live in Connecticut. And it kind of made sense that we just had to raise our children and we had to work overlapping shifts. But as a result of that, I just was able to dabble into so many things. I had my daytime hours, those times I was, the days I was off. And I think the pivotal time was when the pandemic happened. The pandemic was really hard on me and some people who work nights too, because remember, we had to go to work at night and then come back home in the morning to be parents and teachers and educators. And so it really got me thinking that maybe there's just a way we could just collectively, as people who work nights, because, as hospitalists, even nurses say that too. You have like day shift and you have night shift problems. So that was kind of the light bulb that went off. And I just started to look into circadian and metabolic health of people who work night shift. And with that, I was struggling too, when I started as a night shift doctor. And I just got into coaching and a lot of personal development and mindset shifting. And that's how I became a coach. I went through the training process. But besides being a coach, I also like to write. I've been involved in projects. I was part of Sharon's book, Thriving After Burnout. Yeah, I contributed in that book with the female physicians and book about immigrant women. So writing and storytelling is what got me into internal medicine because I listen to stories and I kind of transcribe it into the whole medical language. So so that's just, a little bit about myself. I like to write, I like to cook, I like crafting. I have three beautiful kids and my husband. I have twin boys and my daughter. And then the coaching thing, like I said, Dr. Yel'Ora lifestyle and obesity coaching program for night was an idea that was born around the pandemic time. And I started to you know, create a program, a process that people
Mhm.
who work nights can actually go beyond survival. We don't want to survive. We want to thrive. People need to thrive when they work nights because people work nights for, the best intentions. Beyond the financial perks of working nights, I want people to look beyond that and, prioritize their health so they can minimize risk of chronic illnesses, right? And also optimize some of the skill sets that night shift may kind of put at the forefront of your career. Because, when you work nights, you have autonomy at most jobs because you show up and limited staffing. So you make a lot of decisions as a night worker. So I think it's a skill set that people can actually try to like kind of pivot into other ventures and that would be a good selling point for them. So that's the whole idea behind the coaching program that I do.
Yeah. So you are internal medicine. So that mean, and then you're a nocturnist, like you said, which means you're working at night. And usually you're like 1 week off, week off, on, off. How's that work? Just so listeners kind of understand where you're coming from.
I mean, there's so many kinds of nocturnist schedule. I started actually 3 nights a week, which was why I did it for such a long time. I was working only Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So I had Friday through the weekend off. Every single weekend I was off. So I'm like, how do you trade that for like
It
my
is
working
pretty much
days?
cool.
You
Yeah.
see? So that's kind of what sucked me into it. But as time went on, I just realized that it's just not sustainable to be working every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, because kids have activities, after school programs, parent meetings. So I kind of transitioned to 7 on, 7 off. I said, oh, no, no,
Mhm.
no. 7 on, 7 off is hard too. By the fourth, fifth day, your body is like shot. But the thing about most night shift work, and this is where administrators come in. And when I talk about it, not just about the health aspects of it, because if you think about it, for most people who are employed, to some extent, your administrators or HR, human resources, you have to always liaise with them in order to find the best schedule that will work for you. And
Mhm.
what I'm trying to say is that I kind of found out that 7 on, 7 off, 3 nights a week, at the end of the day, the conversation has to be with my director, with human resources. How can we really find a schedule that will work for me as a mother, as a doctor, as a wife? Can I have like PTO, paid time off? And how easy is it for me to like request to be off and the hospital can find coverage?
Mhm.
I think the flexibility of the schedule is scheduling for night shift workers is pretty much what matters the most.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I
So,
think that, go
mhm.
ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you mentioned the pandemic. So basically, you guys were in a really hard hit area, first of all, right? And I think that, you having working at night and then coming home, and I'm assuming that your kids were at home and needed to be homeschooled, right? And how old were they then?
Oh, my kids were during the pandemic. My kids are in college. My boys are in college now. So that was like
Okay.
5 years ago. They were like in middle school.
Middle school.
So
Okay.
the,
So
yeah,
yeah, they
they were
probably
like,
needed some guidance and motivation, perhaps, if it's hard to get the kids to do the thing. So, I mean, yeah, you're working all night and then you come home and it's, really stressful. And I can see how that can lead to even more increased burnout, right? How about you mentioned, metabolic health and circadian rhythm. Why don't you tell us, what is circadian rhythm in the first place and how does that play a role here?
so pretty much, I mean, the circadian rhythm, it's your internal clock. It's your body's internal clock. And living things have circadian rhythm. Even plants do have circadian rhythms too. So pretty much what that means is that human beings, the cues, the physical cue that we have is light, sunlight. That is actually what gets the rhythm, kicks it off in the morning time. You wake up and your cortisol goes up and you get energized and you go about your day. And of course, during the course of the day, as the sun starts to set and the darkness starts to set in, you find out that the cortisol starts to kind of dip, cortisol level, the hormone, part of the fight and flight hormone, and your melatonin, which is the hormone that makes you sleep, starts to rise. So it kind of peaks sometime after midnight, the melatonin, and that kind of coincides with when you're really very much fast asleep, in kind of deep sleep. So for people who work night shift, the biggest problem you have is that you now have to fight to stay awake. You're trying to go against the grain. You're kind of swimming upstream because at nighttime, when majority of people, like in the US, about 84% of people work like 9 to 5 schedule. So so my program is for the 16% who work either rotating night or permanent night, or once in a while they do work nights. So you find out that now you're trying to stay awake. You're trying to swim upstream, against the system, your circadian rhythm that is shutting down and making you feel sleepy. And that's why most people will try to caffeinate, they try to drink a lot of caffeine in order
Mhm.
to stay awake. And then of course you find out that people, at the workplace, some people leave the lights on. So these are all ways to help you to increase your level of alertness. And that is part of the problem because melatonin has been shown and studied a lot, and it's an anti-inflammatory hormone in your body because inflammation creates a lot of mayhem, including mutations,
Mhm.
and which can lead to cancer and all that. And also melatonin is also an antioxidant because it helps the body to remove all the harmful toxins that happen most of the time when you're sleeping. So when I say metabolic health, just pay attention to night workers to kind of minimize. It's more of minimizing risk, not totally eliminated it, but to minimize risks and to bring it to the forefront so that people know not just, you're thinking about the pay differential, thinking about, that you're going to make more money as a night shift worker, but you also have to be aware of the risks involved in it so that you can kind of transform or prioritize, important, healthy habits that can help you to thrive. So that's just what I do in the program, because the more I've been reading around this for like years now, and the more I just look around and read about it, I mean, a lot of the studies, first of all, poorly understood. Some of the mechanisms of disease are not really well understood. And some of them are inconclusive too. But we
So
know
why don't
that.
you spell out what are the health risks of night shift workers? What are those health risks that you're referring to?
So the health risks associated with night shift that have been studied so far, because I mean, there's been a big study that was done with the nurses, the nurses health study. I think that's the name of it. But the risk is, first of all, there's risk of obesity. People who work
Mhm.
night are bigger, a higher risk of obesity. And when I say obesity, it's more about like, abdominal adiposity, like in the midsection, which is the one, subset of obesity that is associated with visceral fat, in which we really don't want. And the reason around that is the increased inflammation and
Mhm.
the high cortisol levels. So obesity is a trigger for a lot of health issues that we suffer today
Mhm.
as human beings, with the epidemic. And of course, there's been studies that showed cancer, the higher risk of especially breast cancer in shift workers. And that's
Mhm.
why, last month I was really, you got to get your mammogram,
Yeah.
early detection, and of course, other chronic problems, type 2 diabetes. And part of the reason why type 2 diabetes is higher in people who work night shift is, if you remember the way the body is programmed to work, we shouldn't be eating at night. Human beings,
Mhm.
part of the whole circadian rhythm is at nighttime, the metabolic, hormonal processes start to like, dip, and for you to if you continue eating, uncontrolled eating at night, will result in higher blood sugar, and of course with that your risk of diabetes will be higher. So you find out that when people are awake at night, like for people who work night shift, there's increased tendency to eat, whether you're eating
Mhm.
because you're hungry, or you're eating because you're bored, or you're eating because you want to stay
Stay
awake.
awake.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it's like tweaking things here and there, trying to like, gentle tweaks, and also like, a meal plan, and, the whole idea of which is something that is kind of gaining popularity about how people should eat late hours, late, how,
Mhm.
what kind of food, what not what classes of food, what low calorie, high protein, how do you really eat if you have to, if you want to eat at night, what are those foods that are better avoided at night, or, late
Mhm.
time eating? So I think it's something that is very helpful for people that work a night shift, for them to be aware of it. And then one more thing I have to add too is that, for most places, most people I've worked with, because I do share questionnaires from time to time, you find out that most night shift workers don't have access to healthy foods at night, even in the hospital setting. And part
Yes,
of the reason is
especially.
that, I mean, I've been at hospitals that
Yeah.
cafeteria close at 3 p.m.
Mhm.
3 p.m. the cafeteria is closed. And you kind of wonder, this is like a 247,
Yeah.
facility. So that lack of access, then people have to eat whatever is available. And of course,
Mhm.
that during the late hours, the kind of food you have access to are not really the healthiest of food. So these are some
Mhm.
of the factors that contribute to night shift, weight gain, obesity, that people
Yeah.
can be a little bit more aware of it and just try to make some shifts in their
Mhm. So
lifestyle.
what are some key strategies that you recommend for the night workers to improve their health?
So the people I work with, the first step I always like bring to the forefront. I mean, I always, I'm very upfront about, because I work nights, so I know the challenges and all that.
Right.
It's when it comes to food, meal prep, it's extremely very important that you pay attention to what you eat. And to do that, in your consciousness, you have to way ahead of your shift. You have to get ready for your night shift. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And to get ready for your night shift means that if you work 7 days, then you have to, whether you need to like, refrigerate, make your food, and then spread it out over the 7 days and incorporate a lot of protein because protein
Mhm.
promotes satiety, so when you're trying to minimize calories, you need to have that feeling of fullness to avoid, because a lot of people eat at night because they want to stay awake. It's like,
Mhm.
I mean, what are we eating today? We're just passing it around, and it adds up. So the first thing I do, as part of the program that I run, I emphasize the quality of the food you eat. And also I also talk about, as part of the wellness, the support system that you have. It's important that, because some people who work nights will come to me that they don't have supportive partners,
Mm.
and it does add to the stress of the job when the people around you don't really find ways to support you, either with your sleep, because you need to rest. It's important that families, loved one, neighbors, really give you that space so that you can sleep. You can get as much. It's hard to sleep during the day when everybody else is, especially over the weekend.
Mm.
You work into the weekend, kids are home and all that. But sleep is very important for for everybody, but especially somebody who works night shift that really needs to catch up on lost sleep. And of course, when it comes to exercise, because studies have shown, night shift workers are sedentary. There was a study that compared night
Mhm.
nurses, daytime nurses. So I do like, when I do social media, I teach people to find ways, find joy in the simple things that you like. And I'll give you an example. I've tried going to the gym. I've tried paying for like a lot of, personal trainers and all that. And they do work. Don't get me wrong, they work, they help you. But I think that when you decide that, weight loss or a better lifestyle is something you desire, we have so many of equipment, not just equipment, but I like the flex bands. I like to work out with those things. And what I kind of do online when I, do social media, is I try to curate like a workout schedule that you can actually do at home that
Mhm.
involves, whether it's a flex band, a jump rope, a music, and you can, because I have a 45-minute commute to work, I mean, I have music that I play over and over again. For 20 minutes, I listen to a podcast and then I make phone calls. So I'm very routinized. I kind of chop up my commute. So that music that really gets you moving, that you listen to over and over again, I think you should curate it into a dance step that you like. And if it's like a 4-minute track, you can play it over and over again for 20 minutes. I mean,
That's a
play
fun
it
way to
five.
do it. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, you play it 5 times. That's like 20 minutes. So it gets you moving. And you play it over, you will exercise with it. I mean, I see people who work out without music. I don't know how they do it, but I mean, I guess they're different. So this is like a simple, workout routine that I do on the days I work, that I just want to just maintain some level of physical activity, because it really helps with the endorphins. And for me, it
Mhm.
really helps me better. I like to work out in the morning time, and that's how my chronotype.
Yeah, I used to work out before I would go in. So I would do it at night if I was on night shift, and that was what I needed for sure. But let me summarize. So one, you said it's more like an awareness of that it's difficult to be working at night and maintain health, right? You said there are higher risks of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity. You even mentioned breast cancer, and obviously it's higher risk of being sedentary. So being aware of the situation, right? And doing everything you can to counteract it because we're working against our bodies. So the other thing would be getting that rest and having that space, right? And making sure that your partner or family can make sure that you're going to get the rest that you need. And I mean, you mentioned a little bit about accountability as well. And then you mentioned about meal prepping, preparing your food, because wherever you be working, they probably don't have a cafeteria open all night long. And I know in the hospitals in particular, there are never healthy snacks that are there available. And I'm assuming that's in every other industry as well. So kind of being prepared, right? Aware, getting that space for sleeping. Did you have any other top tips for sleeping? Like, suppressing the, I don't know, sunlight on your drive home or something like that? Anything
Yeah,
else that you
the
can
whole idea of
recommend?
suppressing your sunlight on the way home. I think the evidence is conflicting actually.
Okay.
Evidence is conflicting because there have been studies that show that, when people wear the light blocking glasses and it decreases their level of alertness, it could actually, not just you're trying to reset your rhythm so that you can sleep when you get home, but some people actually fall asleep while driving with those, light blocking glasses. So it's very conflicting at this time. I think the most important thing for people who work night shift and who commute, I don't
Mhm.
even advocate, people. I mean, I've done it for a long time, and thank goodness my commute is about 40 minutes. And I know when I just need to sleep or, rest
Yeah.
before I start driving. That's something I've been able to, like, my body, I just know that
That's
I'm
a really
tired.
good point. Because 45-minute drive to me is a long commute. I would be passed out probably. So I definitely, like you said, I wouldn't be wearing those blocking glasses if that is the case. So that's a really good
Yeah,
thing. It needs to be individualized to each person.
yeah, that's the thing about, night shift. It's not a one size fits all recommendations, out there. We don't have that. I think it's like a case by case, person by person, and even studies where you've had, simulations of people working night shift that has shown that night shift workers can thrive with a little bit of support and personal accountability and oversight, and almost like a heart-on effect. When you watch people, they change the way they behave. So there have been studies like that, but at the end of the day, I think that everybody who works at night needs to really know what works for them. But the bottom line is that you need to sleep, you need to eat healthier, you must have to find a way to exercise because it promotes longevity. But people ask me, Dr. Yel'Ora, should I exercise or should I sleep? Well, after night shift. My answer is always, my ready answer is, how do you feel? Your body is it's just your guide. I mean, how does your body feel? If you're tired, you sleep. If you feel
Mhm.
like you have a little energy to put in a few minutes or 10, 15 minutes, then you can do a little gentle workout, because some night shift jobs have a high level of physicality. Some people do really hard work when they go at night. For some people, it's more mental. For some people, it's a combination of both. So your body just tells you how you should function, or how you should, after your night shift, whether you should work out or you should just go straight to bed. And that kind of gets me to the point of, is there a better way to work night shift? And to that, I say yes. There's really a better way that people can work night shift, and that's really what I promote and what I talk about, because studies have shown how long people should work nights. Technically, you should not work night shift for more than 10 years. The CDC had
Mhm.
a big study on this, and of course, the hours that you should work night shift, and the legislature that has evolved regarding how people should work night shift, that sometimes we have derailed from them. Sometimes we have modified them based on whether you work in a government agency versus in a private company, because you should always get a night shift differential when you work at night. But interestingly, some people don't. So
Mhm.
that's more of a legislative issue, but it's just about helping people to reimagine a better night shift experience, because people not work nights for a reason and for a season. That is
Yeah.
how I always try to summarize it. It's a reason and a season, whether it's your children, whether you need the money, whether it's what's available for now, or you like the autonomy of night shift work. Some people just like the autonomy. They like to go in, do what they need to do, and go home. And for some people, they just do it and they run a business during the day. So it's evolved. I mean, night shift is just a product of the globalization and commercialization, and there are more people in the world. So
Yeah.
we just need to, like, find ways to help this group of people who, I mean, I like to say that they do difficult things. It is difficult because it's kind of swimming upstream against your natural circadian rhythm.
Biologic. Yeah, hormones. So, would
Hormones
you have
and
any advice for night shift workers that struggle to maintain relationships and a sense of normalcy in their personal lives?
Oh yes, I actually I did record a podcast on that topic about
Okay.
supporting your spouse who works night shift. And I think that communication is extremely very important, especially for people in relationships, and especially around this holiday season. I think holiday season, I mean, for me, is really a very difficult time as somebody who works nights, because most of the social
Mhm.
events, adult social events, happen at night, and there are tons of them around this time. And for somebody who works days, you can go to work, come back, and participate.
Mhm.
But when you work at night, it's like you gotta go to work when the party is just about to begin. So the communication with your spouse, if it's a problem in your relationship, then you have to stop. That is something I actually do advise people,
Mhm.
couples. If your spouse is not doing well because you work night shift, I think you need to reassess and reevaluate your goals. It's time to stop. Because I was talking about it because I have a radio show that I had kind of took a little bit of a break from it. The night shift lifestyle show with Dr. Yel'Ora was a live radio show actually here in Connecticut. And I talked about it during Mental Health Awareness Month, because I was shocked when I read that couples who work overlapping shifts actually do have a higher rate of divorce. I didn't know
Mhm.
that. And the reasons kind of made sense to me, because you are always like, crossing paths and never really sitting to like,
Right.
have conversation and like normal family, dynamics and all that. So communication is it's the number one most important. And I mean, we hear it all the time, but it's important that everybody has opportunity to air their views and talk about the difficulty and the challenges they may be facing. And sometimes another thing again I do encourage people to do is to delegate. It's really hard to think, especially if you work at night, that you can do everything. You're going to come home and do laundry. Well, you shouldn't,
Yeah.
but he's not gonna do it like maybe your spouse, but at least he's gonna try his best, I hope. And the kids are gonna have clean clothes and up until when you're off and you have free time to do it the best way you like to get it done. So delegation is extremely very important, especially for couples. Just don't try to do everything yourself, because you really need to sleep. I emphasize a lot on the role of sleep for people who work nights. Because
Yeah.
I go to wellness events and people are like, oh, I get off my night shift and my wife wants me to go to my son's basketball game, and she wants actually these are guys complaining actually, and she wants me to be part of the family morning,
Mhm.
especially on the weekend on Saturday mornings. And I understand everybody. It's all in good faith, and whole family life it's just changing a little bit because of the stress of life and cost of living, and people just trying to just get ahead. I just recognize that our lives are changing, but the fundamental family unit still needs to be intact. So communication is the bedrock. If it's not working, then somebody needs to stop doing it.
So
Yeah.
communication, delegation, still get your sleep. I think you were alluding to maybe learning to say no if you have to as well, maybe. Right? Yeah.
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 So if people wanted to find you or follow you or work with you, how can they do that?
I'm active on Instagram and on LinkedIn. Instagram, I go by Dusk to Dawn MD, but Dr. Yel'Ora, if you put in Dr. Yel'Ora, I will pop up too. But I'm also the Dusk to Dawn MD. That was actually how I started before
Mhm.
Yel'Ora now popped in. Oh, Dr. Yel'Ora makes sense. It's like a shortened version of your name that represents that. And on LinkedIn, I go by Dr. Yel'Ora, Chinyelu Oraedu. You can easily find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. Facebook, yeah, I do Facebook, but maybe not as much. But my
Mhm.
website is dryelora.com. Yeah, that's my
And we can put all
website.
that
And
in the show notes for sure. So, what is there
yeah,
any one other piece of advice you'd like to leave for our listeners today?
I just want people who work nights. I mean, if you work night shift in any industry, whether you're in healthcare, whether you work as law enforcement, all the other, professions that do night shift. I do host like a live workshop I've done online before, but I host a workshop that actually kind of unearths, I want to bring to the surface. I help you actually, unearth all those challenges, obstacles, the pains that you have. And then we work our way through to how you can actually reimagine having a better night shift experience, because you know why you work nights. I know why I work nights, and I lost weight while working night shift, and I lost weight through the power of coaching. I had a professional coach, and
Mm-hmm.
also I found a health and weight loss coach who kept me accountable. With the accountability, I was able to start doing it myself, and of course, look into ways that I can help night shift workers for now. My focus is night shift because they do things that are hard, and I think that it's really hard for people who work nights to really navigate a normal 9 to 5 world where they can actually find people who speak to the challenges that they face without just having like a blanket statement. Or I try to channel my expertise and my life experiences as somebody who also works nights, of course with the scientific evidence, to finding what will work with for you as somebody who is going through that process. So a workshop is my best interactive kind of medium, that I can help people the most. So I work with, residents who do night shift. I work with, like I said, people in law enforcement or healthcare. And of course, the program that I have, because I created like a 3-step program that it
Mm-hmm.
goes to pain to the promise. So I'm gonna be hosting it by the beginning of the year actually. So if people are interested, I know they can sign up. If you go to my website at Yel'Ora.com, you can indicate interest, and I will send you the information. So it's like a 3-step process that will totally elevate your night shift experience. It elevates it for whatever reason that you work at night. You will show up at your job with more positivity, less fatigue, and even after your shift, you will continue to experience the rewards of being with a coach who understands your non-standard work hours, your unique
Right.
challenges. So that's what I do, and I am just very passionate because I saw what the pandemic did to people who were not in good shape,
Mm-hmm.
people who were not healthy, or it was horrible because I was working the night the first COVID patient came to Connecticut with my colleague. We admitted the index patient that had COVID, and
Oh,
working nights, seeing the mayhem that unraveled in March 2020, and the months that followed. I just said that I just have to find a way to really help the people that I've worked with for so many years. So it's something I'm passionate about, and let's just help people to see things differently. And when we find out that they are not thriving, they're not doing well, let's encourage them to pivot.
yeah. I mean, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I'm so glad that you did because you're clearly helping people now who really need the help too. So you can totally turn your life around, even if you're still working night shift, if you implement some of the things that we've discussed today. So that's awesome. So we'll put all that information in the show notes. And well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and joining us and giving us all your insight and your expertise. And if people, want to reach out to you and follow you, we'll put that stuff in the show notes. And otherwise, you guys can tune in next week for another episode of the Get Healthy Tampa Bay podcast. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Kerry.